Alright, this is the second video for 3.1. Now we're going to solve quadratic equations by using square roots. So when the problem is set up to where you have u squared equals d, I'm just using variables, okay, doesn't matter what, but something squared equaling another number, then you can square root both sides. That's the point. So u would equal the plus or minus the square root of d. Okay? Anytime you square root both sides, you have a plus or minus of the side, like this side would get rid of the squared. Okay, so square root and squared cancel each other, so there's no plus or minus here. But because u is squared, you can have a negative number squared or a positive number squared and get the same number. And that's why you have this plus or minus on the other side. Alright, well, number 4 is set up just like that. Okay, we have t squared equaling a number. So to solve for t, the inverse of t is taking a square root of that side. Well, if I do that, I have to do it to this side, but I get the plus or minus. So this really gives me what's left after you square root t squared. It gives me a t. The other side ends up being plus or minus the square root of 400. Alright, so square root of 400, if you can take it, and it's a nice pretty whole number, which this is 20. So that means my answers are t equals a negative 20 and a positive 20. Okay, and you can write it as t equals plus or minus. I don't care. I think Big Ideas has it more to where it has them separated, but that plus and minus means there's two answers. There's a positive answer and a negative answer. Alright, so number 5, it's not quite in the form use something being squared equals a number, so we're going to make it that way. We're going to add 19 to both sides. So on the left side, I have 2k plus 3 squared. On the right side, I have 81 plus 19, which is 100. So now, the left side, I have something being squared equals a number. Okay? So I can go ahead and square root both sides. So the left side just becomes what's inside the squared. And now it equals the plus or minus the square root of 100. Alright, well, the plus or minus square root 100 equals plus or minus 10. And at this point, I don't want to start moving things to the other side, because I don't want to mix it in with that 10. Only the 10 has the plus and minus. So I'm actually going to separate this out into two equations. I have 2k plus 3. The left side doesn't change. Well, it's going to equal a positive 10. And I have a 2k plus 3 equaling a negative 10. Okay, remember, that's what we did over here. That's what that plus and minus meant. It gave me a negative and it gave me a positive, or vice versa. I kind of wrote it positive and then negative. And then we're going to solve each of these. If you notice, your steps should be the same. I'd have to subtract 3. I'm trying to solve for k. So I get 2k equals 7. Over here, I have to also subtract 3. I get 2k equals negative 13. Solving for k, I have to divide everything by 2. So I get k equals 7 halves, or 3.5, but we're going to leave it as 7 halves. And then I have to divide this one, k by 2. So I also get the answer is, another answer is negative 13 over 2. So that means this equation will cross my x-axis at 7 halves and negative 13 halves. Alright, let's do number 6. Okay, number 6 is not set up like my u squared equals d. So let's get it that way. Let's get everything being squared to one side and the constant to the other. Alright, so I'm just going to start off by subtracting 5/7 p squared to both sides. Alright, so this gives me a negative 4/7 p squared. And on the right side, I'm left with a negative 20. Alright, this negative 4/7 is not being squared. So I don't have u squared all by itself on the left. So I actually have to get rid of that first. Okay? And instead of dividing both sides by a fraction, it's easiest if you take this side, and we multiply it by a negative 7/4. Flip your fraction and multiply. Alright, so these will cancel out to 1, so I'm left with p squared. So there's my u squared. Looks great. And then I have negative 20 equals, or I'm sorry, negative 20 times negative 7/4, which is 35. A negative times negative is positive. 20 divided by 4 is 5, and 5 times 7 is 35. Fastest way I find to get to it. But now I can square root both sides. So if I square root the left, p squared, square root of that is just p. But since I'm square rooting both sides, this side is square root of 35. Now, if I could simplify that radical, taking out a perfect square, that's what we worked in the chapter 3 opener. Okay, we simplified radicals, or square roots, whatever, however you want to call it. Okay, but this one doesn't. The prime numbers that go into it are 5 and 7. They're both prime. There's not a perfect square. So this is actually our answer. Or you could say p is a positive square root of 35 and a negative square root of 35. Okay, you can separate it out into the two answers if you want. Alright, so now go to your practice and do problems number 13, 16, 17, 20, 23, and 24, and then move on to the next lesson video.